Welcome back to the final session of our symposium. This panel explores private-public collaboration in AI policy, unpacking co-regulatory models and public-private partnerships. Moderating this session is Professor Momo Kisuna from Kyoto University. Please welcome our distinguished panelists. Ms. Sasha Rubel, Head of AI, Generative AI Policy, Europe, Middle East, and Africa from Amazon Web Services. Ms. Akiko Murakami, Executive Director from the AI Safety Institute, Japan. Mr. Masashi Namatame, Representative Director from AI Governance Association. Professor Kisuna, the floor is yours.
Welcome back and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Momo Kisuna, and I am honored to serve as a moderator for this great session, Panel 3, a public-private cooperation in AI policy. And let me briefly introduce myself. I am an assistant professor at the Graduate School of Law of Kyoto University, and where I am currently researching the intersection of technology and law, including AI governance and digital regulation. As we've seen in the previous two sessions, artificial intelligence is reshaping our society and also governance system from democracy to daily life, and the changes are very rapidly. And in response to this, we are seeing a shift of the governance system from government-led regulation to more co-regulatory models involving multi-stakeholders. And this panel will focus on the question of how public and private actors can collaborate to build more inclusive, flexible, and trustworthy governance systems for AI. And we are joined by three distinguished panelists who each bring each a very unique perspective from a global tech company, Japan's AI Safety Institute, and the Public-Private Governance Association. Let me introduce our panelists. From your left, Ms. Sasha Rubel, Head of Public Policy for Generative AI at Amazon Web Services for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And Akiko Murakami, a Director of the AI Safety Institute for Japan. And finally, Masashi Namatame, Mr. Masashi Namatame, Representative Director of the AI Governance Association. To begin, I'd like to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourselves and your current responsibility in your institution. Sasha, could you start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. My name is Sasha Rubel, and I lead our policy work for generative AI in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. What does that mean in practice? It means a couple of different things. One is that I engage with policymakers across the region, but also more globally to look at how we can share best practices and bridge the gap that exists between the public and private sector and policy and practice. Another dimension is I work a lot in terms of advancing the science behind what responsible AI means in practice and what that looks like. Ooh. I'm very loud anyway. And should I start from the beginning or did you hear me? And what that means in terms of looking at how customers can translate ideas that most policymakers will say they agree with, like things like transparency and explainability, into concrete actions. Because if you ask that same question to an engineer, other than the engineer that was in the previous panel, most engineers will say, I have no idea what you're talking about. How do I code that? So we focus a lot on translating these principles into practice for deployers, developers, and designers of AI systems. And then thirdly, I work a lot with our customers, thinking through what operationalizing responsible AI principles and governance frameworks looks like inside of their own companies. Because one of the things that I'm very committed to in having moved from the public sector after 15 years to the private sector is there's a huge misconception that the private sector is waiting to be told what to do. And actually that's not the case. There's a lot of work being done in the private sector to embed responsibility and to move from a kind of approach of responsibility that's bolted on to built into by design, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because we are aware that people consume technology that they can trust. And so responsibility needs to be the foundation of all innovation.
Thank you, Sasha. Akiko-san, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me today. My name is Akiko Murakami. I'm an executive director of the Japan AI Safety Institute. My career started as a researcher in AI, and I'm a techie person, so there's very fewer number of the people in the engineer in the room. But I do believe that the engineer can thinking about the how to align the policy of the AI. So actually, my career started as an AI researcher and moved to the private sector company, the insurance company named Sompo Japan, and P&C insurance company. And currently, I had a double hat to working as the chief data officer of the insurance company and also the executive director of the AI Safety Institute. So that's why in my body, they collaborate the private and the public sector in the same body. Actually, the Japan AI Safety Institute established in the last year, February 14th, and just after the establishment of the UK and the US AI Safety Institute. But these two institutes are already changed the name from the AI Safety Institute to the AI Security Institute of the UK, and the KC, the Center for the Standard and Innovation Institute. But we are keeping the safety inside the name of the institute, and we are not a policy maker, but we are supporting the activity, private and public sector as well, and for the releasing the guideline and of the how to secure the AI safety. So that's we are the technical the groups, but we are keen to know how to govern the AI from the technical manner. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Akiko-san. So, Masa, would you start?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So nice to see you all, and thank you very much for having me here today. I'm Masa Namatame, Representative Director of AI Governance Association, which is a private sector association consisting as many as 130 or so corporations from all the many different industries from all around the world, primarily from Japan. But we invite many non-Japanese large language model foundation developers and AI-related tech companies and many others. And while working for the IGER Governance Association on one hand, but on my full-time side, I'm a chief digital officer of Tokyo Marine Holdings, which is a P&C insurance companies running business across 46 countries. Usage of AI is on one part, it's our way of improving our core capabilities of insurance businesses. But at the same time, we need to pay attention to what could happen, what risks could be the danger for our entire society, and protecting those dangers from happening, or protecting the customers from those potential dangers that could be the potential areas and focus for the future for our insurance companies. So from both perspectives, AI and the potential danger could be one of the most important priorities from my professional kind of perspectives. And Professor Habuka-san, thank you very much for the invitation. When I received it, I noticed that I was set to speak in the very last and third sessions. So I just wondered if there's anything left for me to speak today. But having heard two very insightful sessions, my predictions turned out to be true. But nonetheless, I try my best to engage as much of interesting discussions by talking with Akiko-san and Sasha and Momo-san as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So now we make it clear that how Perfect. We are selected as a panelist. So let's begin with the first topic. The first topic for the panel is what is the status of AI regulation and how each organization engages with those regulations. So Sasha, could you start? The conversation? How does AWS engage with governments and international bodies in developing AI policies?
Sure. I'd first like to kick it off by Habuka-san thanking you, because I could also never give a topography of the state of AI regulation as beautifully and eloquently as you did in the introduction, which I think really sets the scene. But I'm also really excited that we're here in Yasaka Shrine, because I think when you trace the history of spirituality, and as a disclaimer, similarly to Rob, I will say that I am a philosopher and anthropologist and theologian by training. The kind of red thread that goes through the spiritual questions that we've asked as human beings across centuries has been, what is it that makes us fundamentally human? And what is the relationship of humans to other humans and to something bigger than themselves? And the reason why I'm so excited about working in the AI governance field, particularly for AWS, is I think this moment is representative of a question that we're also asking ourselves now, which is, and it was reflected in some of the conversations that happened in the second panel, what makes us uniquely human and what differentiates us from machines and from AI? And what kind of future do we want to co-create as human beings that is a future that is tech-enabled, but that also stays human-centered? And so I'm really happy that these conversations today and also over the coming days are in a place like this, because it returns the fundamental question that we have to be asking ourselves to exactly this. How are we differentiating what it means to be human, and what kind of future do we want to create? But I think in the beginning, Satoshi said something in one of the panels that I really liked, which is we don't have all the answers. And I think the starting point is that we have to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, from tech companies to policymakers to engineers to scientists. Right now, there are a lot of hard questions that we have to be asking ourselves, and some of those hard questions have answers that have really hard trade-offs. And so, responding to your question of how we are specifically engaging with policymakers, the first is really about asking those hard questions and making sure that we're coming together to ask those hard questions around things like the future of intellectual property, the future of data protection, the question of human rights and what that looks like in an AI-powered era. And part of that is about investing in science. So the first thing that we've been doing at AWS is really making sure that we're advancing the science behind artificial intelligence as the technology continues to evolve in a very, very rapid way. Where we are today, nobody could have imagined 24 months ago. I've been in this field for more than 15 years. If you told me when I was doing my PhD that this is where we would be today in terms of AI innovation, I would have said, you might be crazy. And so where will we be in 12 months is also a question that takes people coming together and advancing the science to address some of the hard questions, including, for example, what Nathaniel underlined, of AI and the future of democracy. How can we use AI to combat disinformation? What are the kinds of tools we need to be thinking about in developing those? So that's the first element of how we're engaging. The second element is education. And Isabel in the previous panel underlined that it's not just a question of systems, it's also a question of people. And I think one of the things that's really essential is to start with people, including policymakers. It's really hard to regulate a technology that you don't understand. And so making sure that we're investing, scientists, the private sector, engineers, in coming together with policymakers to sit down and share what AI is and isn't as a technology, because it's not magic, and how to regulate based on risk and not based on the technology alone. The third element that we're really working on is the question of multi-stakeholder conversations. And Rob did a great job at kind of highlighting the importance of not only multi-stakeholder conversations, but interdisciplinary conversations. Asada, you started off the panel by saying you're only an engineer. I would say that we need to make sure that engineers are in the rooms, because there are some really big risks related to this technology, but we need to make sure that the ways in which regulators are thinking about regulating those risks are technically feasible and grounded in state-of-the-art of what is possible. And so those kinds of conversations, I think, and we see this right now with the EU AI Act, are really important to make sure how we're regulating is clear and technically feasible and based on what's possible. And then two last elements that we're working on, standards, and I'm smiling at Rob, who has played a really important role in thinking through what standards at a global level could look like, including frameworks for interoperable approaches to risk management. It's really important in an increasingly divided geopolitical world that we come together across stakeholder groups and across countries and across jurisdictions to have a shared understanding of not only what risk is, but what is artificial intelligence? One of the biggest debates that happened, which lasted, to be nice, I will say months, but it's actually years, was how do we define AI system? What exactly are we regulating? What are we not regulating? Are we regulating spreadsheets? And so coming together to define what these definitions are that we should be using as the basis of regulation is something that we're very committed to. And then lastly, and I evoked it in the beginning, really translating responsible AI from principles to practice. The Boston Consulting Group did an interesting piece of research where they found that responsible AI was actually a top management issue for around 80% of companies, but only 25% of the companies that said it was a top management issue actually had governance mechanisms inside of their own companies to translate this conviction that responsible AI was important into practice. So making sure that we're developing guidelines that help companies of all sizes translate these principles that I mentioned of transparency, explainability, privacy, and fairness into practice is something that's really important. And as part of that, thinking through how AI can actually help us address some of the biggest risks related to AI. The reason why I moved from the public sector to the private sector was a solution that AWS developed called SageMaker Clarify, which helped automatically detect and remove bias from training data sets. The people who are developing training data sets are people. As people, they have bias. And so how can we actually use this technology to filter and identify the ways in which we can make more comprehensive data sets? If we're developing data sets to, for example, develop a solution for menopause, but that data set is based on 90% men's data, which was the case in a training data set to help develop a solution for menopause, it's going to help nobody. And so making sure that we can use AI to rectify some of that and make sure that we're reducing the amount of bias and increasing the amount of accuracy is something that we're very invested in.
Thank you, Sasha, for your very insightful comment. So I think the questions you raised in are very important, and all of the elements you mentioned are all very important to answer. Maybe try to answer those questions, and maybe we can return to those questions later. But Akiko-san, could you share the status of Japan currently regarding the AI regulation and how your institution is evolving?
Thank you. So, as you may know, the Japan the AI Act is released just several months ago, and the Japan AI Act is a very specific law about not the hard law, but the hard law that supports the soft law. So there is no punishment of any other AI regulation, but it's the supporting the soft law. We already released some of the guidelines of the AI is supported by the hard law. It's a very specific the specific act, AI Act in the world. And also there is the EU AI Act, and also the US released the AI Action Plan last week, 2 weeks ago. And also China released the AI the strategy from just after the US AI Action Plan. And there is so many information about the AI regulation because of there is no border for the AI. So the Japanese company have to care about the other countries' regulation if they want to be in the business outside Japan. And also the American or the European company care the other countries companies in the other country care about the Japanese law. So that's why the AI Safety Institute, the main role is that the kind of the information hub of the AI safety and the AI regulation, especially for the Japan AI Safety Institute, is a kind of the information hub in the Japan for the AI safety and the regulations. And also the technical is changing rapidly. So all the AI Act or the bill of the related to the AI is a living document, not stay in the long time. So that's why the policymaker have to care about the changing the technology, and also the technology, the engineer should report to the policymaker in the current status of the technology. So that's the important role of the institute of the relating the AI safety or the AI regulations. For instance, the AI Safety Institute, Japan AI Safety Institute, have a partnership of the National Research Institute to collaborate with the researching on the AI safety related things. And also we have starting the activity on the working group with the private sector. So for the AI safety is very dependent on the industry. For instance, we are in the insurance company. The insurance industry care about the AI risks in the specific topics of the AI insurance. So that's why the Japan AI Safety Institute to open to the private sector to join the working group on the talking about the specific topic. We have the 4 working group for now. The 2 is the horizontal, and the 2 is vertical. And the industry specific topic is one of the topic is robotics, and the another one is healthcare. And we are keen to know about what's the needs of the other industry area who are working want to talking about. And the horizontal topic is assessment and the standards. So that's this working group will be contribute to the current status to the policymaker. So that's the one of the mission we are doing now for now. And I think there is a huge gap between the policymaker and the technical people. And even inside the technical people, the academia and the industry are the huge gaps. So that's why we have to thinking about how to fill in such kind of the gaps with communicate more tightly. So that's one of the topic I'm very interested in for now.
Thank you, Akiko-san. Now I can see a AI Safety Institute is actively involved in as a information hub between a private and public, and I think this is very important because as you mentioned, technology is rapidly changing. Now a government cannot have enough information to control or govern. So I think the law is crucial for the AI governance system. Thank you. Masa, would you like to add anything from the perspective or more like private side sector?
Well, thank you, Momo-san. Well, to be frank with you, I'm overwhelmingly pleased to be able to start with this particular question because this is somehow related to why we have decided to essablish AI Governance Association out of private sector in order for us to be able to fully interact with the public sectors on this particular matter. 3 years ago, or 3 years and a half or so ago, when we witnessed the remarkable development of ChatGPT or other foundation models, while instinctively I was fascinated with the capabilities of LLM ChatGPT because it creates sentence documents and understands the nature of the context. And it works multimodal, understanding the nature of the picture or the nature of the voices and whatsoever. I was just fascinated. And it has a perfect fit for financial services industry because it requires a lot of understanding of unstructured data, such as a picture or human being interaction, conversations, whatsoever. So that's one part. But at the same time, we somehow felt that there are some risks that could be possible as we continue to utilize the kind of power of the AI in our businesses. But being a financial services industry, we need to be extremely careful not to misguide our customers or not to mislead entering into our wrong transactions with the customers. So we repeated the many discussions with internally and externally as well, including Professor Habuka-san as well. But at the time, we had absolutely no idea what could happen. Then what do we do? In order for us to do that, we need to gather intelligence from as many of different participants in our society. So that is, I believe, that is the only way we can create a comprehensive understanding of what could happen and what things that we should pay attention to. So that's one part. The other thing is not just protecting our companies from potential risks associated with AI from happening, but at the same time, we just discussed what could happen to the broader society and community, not just for the individual company or individual citizens. Because that, as Professor Pasili discussed about the kind of democratism, how it's impacted by the use of an AI, that could happen to the entire society going forward. Historically, 150 years ago, we have experienced the massive production era after the Industrial Revolution, when we saw a significant amount of increase in the production of goods and services. After that, we have enjoyed the buying and using all those products and goods in our lives. And we just thought that is the kind of principles and principles that we should admire as citizens. But 20 years later, 30 years later, we saw significant side effect after the massive production, which could be the kind of easy consumption or kind of natural pollutions of kind of our environment whatsoever. And our human beings spent significant amount of time to adjust our kind of moral understanding or what kind of principles that we should admire as a human being. And it took a lot of time, even 150 years ago. Going forward, if we apply that notion to the AI, for sure, we are going to see the massive generation era out of power of AI. As Professor Matsui-san mentioned, there will be thousands of music that's pretty much similar to those of Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, or Southern All-Stars. Initially, we may say that, oh, these are produced by AI, so we should not just enjoy those songs. But as we see thousands of songs, which is similar, exactly similar to what Bruce Springsteen actually sings, how can we endure just segregating or putting those songs aside from actually listening to the Bruce Springsteen's songs in my daily life? Maybe we will be somehow affected by the mere quantity and quality of those information generated by the generative AI. And we need to be fully mindful on what we should be pay attention to and what guidelines for paying appropriate attention for those kind of cultural development over the future. So that things leads me to believe that on this particular matter, and as a society, also again we need to make our intelligence collective, so that we can discuss about what societal effect that a generative AI might pose to our society, and how we could be mindful in proactively and preemptively address with those potential issues from happening. And those are the primary reasons why we decided to establish AI Governance Association by making intelligence collective. That's one thing. And after doing that, we will be able to interact very effectively with the policymakers. Because it's not just a representation of one industry or one company or one individual. By making the kind of whole voices together, that those will be the most reliable source of voices from private sectors. So that was the kind of reason for creating the AI Governance Association. And actually today, we are interacting with the AI Safety Institute, representing from government side. And also we are working with the policymakers, lawmakers, Liberal Democratic Party, and also financial services associations, agency, those regulatory bodies on our AI governance related matters. So thank you.
Thank you, Master, for introducing a history of AIGA, and thank you so much. Now we found all those institutions are all involved in the creating AI governance system very actively, and they are all being a hub between private, not only private and public, but also between the private and or many different voices. And so in doing the involving involving those activities, have you ever met any challenges, or do you find any challenges? Probably Akiko-san, would you start?
Yes. So, as I explained in my introduction, so I'm working for the IT company over 20 years, and I understand the situation of the private sectors at the IT company. And currently, the AI safety is one of the hot topic, but it's very difficult to mitigate for reaching the ROI. So that's why the all of the company is asking the governance people to how to keep the AI governance with the low cost. It's a very tough question for the company, and also that we for in the technical things. For instance, the large language model safety. There is some kind of the creating the resource for the creating the guardrail of the output. So because of the creating the resource is a very hard task. That taking a cost and human resources. But it's difficult, but it's that needs a very specific skill set for the large language models. So some of the research institutes trying to create such kind of the resources. For instance, the National Institute for the National Research Institute for the Informatics (NII) is trying to create the such kind of the resources named the Answer Carefree. But the Answer Carefree, if the fully open to the such kind of the resources, the bad company or the people try to utilize such kind of the resources to through the LLM for the market use. So that's the one of the topic we have the challenge, and also the private sector try to create their own resources, but it takes a cost. So they do not want to open to the public to the such kind of the resources, especially for the resources for the specific industry. For instance, the large language model for the healthcare needs their own resource, the resources for the safety, but the resources takes the cost. So that's why the company want to create the revenue with the resources. So what is the common things for the safety, and what is their own the resources for the company? So that's what it's a very good question for the private sector to what kind of the public activity and what kind of the activity is keeping in the company. So that's the very big challenge for us to how to balancing these two things.
Thank you, Akiko-san. I believe AWS is exactly giving resources to the private companies. Sasha, would you like to complement these issues?
Sure, I'll start with building on Akiko, one of the things that you said, and I'll close again by reflecting on one of the things that you said. For us I'd break it down into kind of 6 key challenges that we're seeing with regards to not only AI adoption, but also regulation right now. We publish, and I'll speak from the perspective of Europe, building on a research paper that we commissioned and published in February around what we're hearing from both citizens and businesses in Europe that are holding them back in terms of thinking through AI adoption, but also understanding AI regulation. So Akiko, you mentioned AI governance comes with a cost.
Yes.
And one of the key things that came out of this report that we published in terms of blockers to AI adoption in Europe was regulatory uncertainty. So in Europe, the businesses that we talked to, around 68% of them said that they didn't understand their obligations under the EU AI Act. When we talked to businesses across Europe, they estimated that the compliance costs to comply with more of the 100 digital policy files in Europe was up to 46% of their overall IT spend. So imagine you're spending 46% of your overall IT spend to address compliance from not only the EU AI Act, but also the multiplicity of laws that Mario Draghi, who was commissioned to publish a report on kind of the state of digital policy in the EU, also highlighted. It's like starting a marathon 50 kilometers behind some of the other innovators in other parts of the world. I want to be clear, though, that this is not a call for deregulation. This is a call for simplification and for mapping of where overlaps might exist in existing regulations and regions. This has an important implication because of the companies that were surveyed, companies that said they didn't understand the regulations in place would invest up to 30% less in AI adoption over a 3-year period. This does not only have economic impact, it also has social impact in some of the innovations that Nathaniel talked about in the first panel of the ways in which AI can actually be an important lever for social transformation and also advances in spaces like medicine, for example. And so simplifying, and you mentioned it in your introduction, right now there's a huge emphasis in the EU on how do we simplify these rules. One of the biggest questions I get from our customers is the impact assessment in the EU AI Act. Can we use the data protection impact assessment that we have to do in the GDPR as the part related to data protection in the EU AI Act? And right now, there's no answer to that. And so imagine you're a startup with maybe 3 people, an engineer, a founder, and maybe a co-founder. You definitely don't have an army of legal counterparts. You probably don't have a policy counterpart. Imagine trying to navigate these enormous laws, especially even more so when you try and scale to other jurisdictions, most notably for EU companies in places like North America or the UK. So simplifying and clarifying these regulations is absolutely essential. And again, international standards play a really important role. So that's the first blocker, regulatory uncertainty. Second blocker, skills. Of the companies that we talked with, and this is more than 15,000 companies per EU country, a lot of companies came to us and said, we'd love to adopt AI, but we have nobody who understands AI inside of our company. In where I'm from, which is France, it takes companies up to 7 months to recruit someone with the necessary AI skills. We forget a lot of times when we talk about the AI revolution and the moment that we're in, that at the end of the day, it comes down to people. And you need to make sure that you're training your people for what is not only a cultural, but also an organizational shift. But what's interesting is that when we talked to employees said, we'd love to learn about AI, but the classes are expensive and we don't have the time. And so one of the things that we've done is make sure that we make these classes available in an open source format, because it's really important that they're self-paced and that they're available. But here I'd like to underline that it's not just about understanding AI as a technology. Not all of us are going to become coders, but all of us are going to, and I would say already do, interact with AI. So it's one of the reasons why we've placed a big emphasis on developing courses dedicated to responsible aspects of AI, on things like fairness and bias, privacy, because these are things that even as end users, you also need to be aware of. Third blocker, investment. One of the biggest things that we heard in Europe specifically is that there's a lack of investment, particularly from the public sector, in AI adoption. And one of the things that came out of this report is that we found that when the public sector leads in adopting AI, it actually inspires trust, which I would say is the fourth blocker that exists, is that people don't trust this technology. How do you want to trust something that you don't necessarily understand? And so there again, there's a need to really double click and emphasize the education pillar linked to responsibility. The fifth aspect that I would say is a blocker is one of the things that we're seeing evolve in Europe, and I'm noticing it as a trend in other parts of the world, is what we've called a two-tier economy, where there's a bigger split happening in terms of adoption rates, where particularly startups are adopting AI faster than bigger and larger enterprises, also because fundamentally this is an organizational shift. And so if you have to move an organization of 100 people, it's very different than if you're moving in an organization of 100,000. And so bridging that gap that also exists between the private sector and public sector, so private sector going full speed ahead while the public sector is cautiously looking at adopting AI, even when, and Nathaniel, you did a great job at articulating this in the first panel, there's an amazing opportunity to use AI to bridge the gap between citizens and government and help government deliver on its mission to be closer to its citizens. And then lastly, to speak and do full circle, Akiko, on your comment on resources, one of the things that we're really committed to doing is looking at how do you democratize access to this technology, and how do you take it out of the hands of a couple of large companies and make sure that it's accessible. And it's one of the reasons why, for example, we've partnered with Hugging Face to look at what is the opportunity that exists to amplify open source solutions in a safe way. And I know Rob has done a lot of work on this kind of tension that exists that nobody has an answer to yet on open source and access and national security and risks related to that. And work around, for example, frontier model safety frameworks are really important in making sure that we can render these resources accessible in an affordable way while making sure that they stay safe.
Thank you so much for the supporting my comments, and I'm very interested about how to achieving this such kind of the activity from the cost perspective and the skilled perspective, and also the investment perspective. I do believe that private sector always thinking about the revenue. So of course, our company is already thinking about the revenue. So, but I do believe that the one of the mission of the private sector, not only for the earning the revenue, but also the thinking about the society. So think because of the keeping the good society, the company can doing the business in the society. So that's why we have to thinking about the society of the one hand of the thinking about the revenue, and one hand is thinking about the society. So that's why one of the answer that we can achieve such kind of the challenge achieving this mission to from the private sector.
I'll be really brief in responding to that because that's one of my favorite questions. And again, as someone who kind of made the jump from the public sector to the private sector, I'll just share, even though it's being live streamed, an anecdote is that when I joined the private sector, a lot of the comments from my colleagues from the public sector were, "Oh my God, you've joined the dark side." And it was so interesting that was the perception of industry, the industry is the dark side. And what I found in the time that I've been in AWS and in the industry more broadly is that there's actually a lot of light and that we're not waiting to be told the right thing to do. And there's this debate, which I find one of the most dangerous debates that exists in governance and regulation right now, which is it posits responsibility and innovation as opposites. You either act responsibly or you innovate. And fundamentally, that is a destructive myth, because responsibility drives trust, trust drives adoption, and adoption drives innovation. So there's actually a virtuous cycle that needs to exist where responsibility and innovation need to go hand in hand. And then to your second point in terms of the good aspect in the revenue, I would say that, again, just deconstructing that, good AI needs good data needs good AI, but good work needs good people. And so it goes back to what I was talking about in terms of education, is that it is about training people inside of AWS, but also outside. And it's one of the reasons why the courses that we made available for free are the same courses that we use to train our engineers, because it's about changing and training the competencies, but also training the hearts and minds of the people who are creating these solutions so that it's human rights by design going forward in the ways in which we think about the future of this technology. So it's not, the revenue aspect is not divorced from the need to consider the social transformation, because that's the long game.
Well, this is exactly the types of collaborations between public and private sectors. So thank you very much for that, and Sasha and Akiko. From me, first of all, we receive a lot of support of resources from AWS, so thank you, Sasha, for that. Working for AI governance things from our corporations as well as governance associations, one is we still lack data points in order for us to come to the conclusion in a confident and comfortable manner, so that this is, we can distinguish what appears to be the danger of the AI usage and what can be tolerable for the use of AI. Because I believe that everybody is working on creating an AI chatbot or AI customer centers whatsoever by using a kind of voice AI recognition systems. But can we really draw the line between what appears to be the heartfelt sales communications from the AI to the customers and somewhat manipulated induction of the customers to the intended kind of sales transactions or whatever? Can we define the differences between the two? That's really difficult. But in order for us to do that, we need to create many data points so that we can come up with a kind of conclusion in a kind of inductive manner. So that's exactly what we are still missing. So we need to continue to gather and accumulate data points. That's number one. That's across all the AI-related things. That's number one. Number two, from the private sectors, as you discussed together, there are still we still see some certain untransparency or opaqueness or unstableness in the regulatory frameworks. And because of that, especially for the financial services industry, we tend to be rather too protective. And because of that, we just draw the line way too before what appears to be the kind of most critical borderlines between dangers and normal course of businesses. That's not necessarily fully seen in our businesses. So I wonder how we could establish the kind of best balance between the protectionism or defense mechanism as well as the use of an AI, so that we can accelerate pace of development and so forth. And number three, we need to receive the ultimate customers' kind of voices at the same time too, because as I talked earlier, how our customers understand the nature of the communications, whether it is kind of heartfelt communications or inductive, manipulated induction of the communications. We need to somehow come to the customers so that we can make our kind of understanding fully how broader communities and customers regard our use of AI. Those are the kind of challenges we see right now.
Great, thank you so much. Now we see the situation right now and the challenges, and we can find so many hints to make a future better AI governance. And we can so much things to discuss, but I'd like to open the floor for questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand.
Thank you so much for the panel. My name is Mateo. I'm a researcher and graduate student at Tokyo University. My question was for you, Ms. Rubel. Specifically, I think there's a lot of success with government and private sector working together to deploy new technologies like cloud and AI. However, I think there's also a risk component with governments that maybe have like a risk averse mindset, or be prone to use analog technology or heavy dependence on that. So is there a reality where these kind of governments are possibly left behind entirely, or are there mechanisms that the private sector can do to support further cooperation? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Peter. I'm from Taiwan, and I'm a law student. So as a law student whose master's thesis is dealing with the open source AI governance, I really want to hear more from open source AI, because currently people are having arguments and this debate about that, whether open source AI will create more opportunity for the good governance, or whether open source AI will actually amplify the risk of AI. So I really want to hear the perspective from the panelists. And the second part is that about the education, because currently I think people are having not the same attitude and different perspective on AI. Part of that is because different backgrounds, like I'm learning law, and my girlfriend is learning Taiwanese literature, and you can see that if you are learning Taiwanese literature, it's kind of like lacking the data in the AI model right now. So currently for her, her perspective on AI will be very different than my perspective on AI. So this kind of different perspective on AI will influence the education, and how to solve this problem can be a very critical part. I want to hear more on that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for a very interesting talk. My name is Takayuki Hirose. I'm an engineer and researcher of a space company in Japan, and I started to join Professor Inatani and Professor Habuka's team from this April. So I'm now joining here as an audience for some reasons. But yeah, my question is for Murakami-san. And if I remember correctly, you were mentioning about there is a gap between academics and industry, and I'm very curious about it. So if possible, could you please provide more detail about what have you seen before, and with some examples? Thank you very much.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon again. My name is Kwame Odamedakwa from Ghana. I work in a telecoms company back in Ghana. My question is sort of maybe for Sasha and Akiko. I'm wondering, how do you balance sort of a country's need for sovereign AI with sort of your commercial ambition, which may come with the engagement you have with them, right? Because sometimes a country or a developing country may not have that inherent expertise. And when you engage with them, you're coming from a position of power and knowledge that maybe the government official may not necessarily have privy to their knowledge, right? So from your perspective, because in a way you're representing AWS, but then for the average politician, they're representing people who may not be aware of the impacts of generative AI in their community. So how do you balance that need to share what is useful for them, but also not also override the conversation with the commercial element that unfortunately will be in the room when you're engaging with them as well? Thank you.
Hello, I am Kyosuke Momoi, Japan qualified attorney from K&L Delegates at Global Law Firms, Tokyo office. And my question is, in some countries, including in Japan, AI governmental regulations are still not so clear and rather vague. And in such situation, the roles of a private company or private organization is so important. And what kind of challenges have you experienced in creating the soft law of the AI regulations?
Thank you
for your questions. So maybe we can combine our questions and answer from Sasha.
Sure. I'll be very brief because I'm conscious of time. I think there were 4 questions directed towards me. One is governments and risk-averse mindsets, and is there a risk of governments being left behind? I spent the majority of my life growing up and then working in sub-Saharan Africa, and one of the things that I find the most striking is the most amount of optimism that exists around this technology are in areas of the world where access to the technology is a challenge, but also represents an opportunity to leapfrog in terms of development. Nathaniel in the first panel highlighted that one of the areas and countries in the world that is the most pessimistic about AI is actually the United States. That statistic is flipped on its head when you look at the general sentiment in sub-Saharan Africa and what exists in terms of enthusiasm of what this represents both economically and socially. I think that there's a need to do and invest in education of what AI, but also AI enabled by the cloud, represents when fundamentally the geopolitical shift in regulatory conversations right now is about industrial policy, AI, and the future of countries' competitiveness. And a lot of innovators on the ground in these countries are looking not only to be national champions, but also global champions. And so there is this imperative to think through what is a pro-industrial policy for responsible and safe AI adoption look like? And that's where a lot of the attention I see is moving towards, including in governments that traditionally might be more risk averse because they understand that the future of their country's competitiveness depends on seizing the opportunity that this technology represents. The question on open source AI, is it an opportunity? This is one of the most difficult questions that I see right now. And I mentioned it in one of my responses to the questions. How do you balance, the need for open access and democratized access and the need for security and safety? If you have an answer to that question, please come see me. But I think that this is something that we're working on. And again, it points to the fact that Rob underlined of the need to have these multi-stakeholder and interdisciplinary discussions, because open source is an imperative just as much as safety and security is. It's a really hard question. It's one of the things that we've been doing in terms of the work that we've published on our frontier safety framework, frontier model safety framework, alongside works of the G7, like the Hiroshima Code of Conduct that you mentioned, where we're looking to see how can open source and safety coexist. I loved the question on Taiwanese literature. I think it represents something that's so fundamental that Rob also talked about in terms of cultural nuances and some of the other panelists in the second panel. This points to the question of underrepresented data sets and the future of a technology that's trained on data that is not representative. It's one of the reasons why we're working with the G7 and the recent AI Hub for Sustainable Development that was just launched with a particular emphasis of building out training data sets in underrepresented languages so that users and producers of this technology can see themselves in the technology that we hope they're not only using, but also creating. It's really important to think about making sure that individuals are not just consumers but producers of this technology. Part of that involves making sure that there are data sets in local languages. That has some difficult questions around copyrighted content, particularly for underrepresented languages on the internet. And I'm happy to kind of deep dive that over the coming days. Last question on sovereign AI. I love that question. I think that there's a lot of debate right now about what sovereign AI means. Similarly to debates of what digital sovereignty means. Even within Europe, if you ask, for example, what digital sovereignty means in France, it's a very different answer than you'll get of what digital sovereignty means in, for example, places like the Czech Republic. I think the same kind of debate is manifesting around questions around sovereign AI. Does sovereign AI mean you own the entirety of the AI value chain locally? Do you have data localization mandates? Or does it mean you focus on areas where you have comparative advantage on the application and services layer, for example? The most brilliant response that I've ever heard to this question, and I will not try and be smarter than her, is from the digital minister of Singapore, Josephine Tao, where she said Singapore is an aviation hub, but we actually don't produce any airplanes. So Singapore became an aviation hub, focusing on where they had comparative advantage without trying to do the entirety of the value chain of aviation. And I think that more and more countries are looking at, okay, where is their comparative advantage and how they think about what realistically is a panoply of definitions of what sovereign AI means. My hope is that sovereign AI will mean that countries are positioned as producers and not just consumers of AI solutions that are homegrown, that are representative, that are trained on localized training data and culturally relevant, and that become global champions.
Okay, I'm also conscious about the rest of the time, but I try to cover the three questions. So the first one is the question from you and about the gap. What is the gap between the academic and the industry? So I do believe that I came from the research area, so that's why the researcher is very keen about the transparency and always that the thinking about what's the scientific way. It's a very subjective way. So because there is one example is that we, the AI Safety Institute, doing the joint testing for many of the AI models, and the test is doing the very scientific, try to do a scientific way, but there is no subjective. So that the several testing the models and open to the result, open to the public, but not a scientific way. It's not a research paper. It's just a result of the testing we did it. So most of the engineers in AI Safety Institute in the world, it came from the industry. So that's why they are doing the testing just like the industrial way, but it's not a scientific way. So that's why all the scientists who read the report, it's not a scientific way. It's not just a report. It's not a paper. So that's a very huge between the gap. So I do believe that we have to collaborate with more deeply. So we have to thinking about what's the way to all the both area, the researcher and the industry can understand each both of the result of the testing. So that's one of the answer of your question. And I try to answer the sovereign AI questions. So I'm very love this question as well. So because of the sovereign AI, the topic is very similar to the open source question because of some of the models is very transparent to which what kind of the data they using creating the models, or what kind of the way to creating the models. And also the sovereign AI should be I think not this is a very personal opinion, but not to creating the sovereign AI from the scratch. But we can do the very transparent models with the existing models or the existing way, and we can utilize such kind of the model in a sovereign way. So because of the non-transparent model have some kind of the bias or some kind of the risk inside the model. So that's why we have to thinking about what kind of the behind the scenes risk inside the model. So that's the one of the answer for the sovereign AI. And the last one is a very difficult question for me. It's a difficult question for it's kind of in this situation is a very difficult situation. So creating the software is a very messy way. So, but we have to try to find out a way to how to create the software, and because of most of the company care about the risk, but most of the company do not have much the skill set of thinking about the risk itself. So that's why the Japanese government or our research the AI Safety Institute try to providing the information as much as we can, so that it's not a perfect software, but this is one of the way to providing such kind of the information to guiding thinking about the risk by the human resources. So that's my question.
Well, as we run over, finally, I now understand that working with an Akiko and Sasha makes my job far easier. So, so that's one thing. And quickly respond to the question raised by Kyohei-san regarding the soft law kind of things. Challenge remains on the kind of mentality because we are somewhat kind of obsessed by the notion that somebody is able to create a hard law. Before we think about soft law kind of things that are kind of typically to Japanese corporations because in the United States there are lots of lawsuits, law cases which create soft law day by day. But in this country, many businesses have been historically regulated by the hard law, by the regulatory bodies. That's one thing. And the other thing is within the organization, even if we try to create soft law kind of things, actually psychologically nobody would like to be a judge in the company because it's kind of scary and it's dangerous. If you make a mistake, he or she will be punished. So under this uncertain kind of things, nobody would like to be the kind of purely independent judge within the organization.
Thank you all for your answering. Sadly, we are already running the time, so thank you so much for our panelists, and thank you so much for the audience, both in person and online, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all speakers and moderators for a day of rich dialogue and global perspectives on AI governance. To close today's symposium, I invite Professor Inatani Tatsuhiko, Unit Leader of the Artificial Intelligence and Law Unit of KaiLab, to deliver the closing remarks.
So, good evening again, everyone. So, now I'm sure I could successfully persuade you all that I'm a real professor despite my outlook. So, actually, I have to be honest, so I didn't realize, so today's the symposium would be this big and formal, but it was a huge success in anyway, so I'm very, very happy. And first of all, I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to all of you being here, despite the typically humid and hot Kyoto summer afternoon. I also want to express my heartfelt thanks to our panelists for their passionate and very insightful discussions on the pressing issues we face in the area of AI governance. To the KaiLab Secretariat and the staff, thank you for your hard work and dedication in making this symposium a success. My sincere appreciation also goes out to AWS, Yasaka Shrine, Kyoto City, and the AI Governance Association for their generous support. As you could see, the discussions were stimulating, intensive, and highly sophisticated, so I imagine many of you, like me, start to feel a bit tired, I think. So, and obviously, there's not much I can add to the rich discussion that we've had, so I'll keep my closing remarks brief. So, as Mayor Matsui mentioned, Kyoto is a city of both tradition and innovation. So today's discussions reflected this perfectly with some of the conversation building on the traditional legal theory and political science to address the novel challenges, while other parts introduced completely novel approaches. I believe that tradition only survives when it continuously innovates, protecting what must be preserved while embracing what must be adapted. I sincerely hope that today's discussion in this historic city will be a step toward weaving our traditions anew. For those of you participating in the 4-day summer program starting today, I hope you will actively engage and join us in shaping our tradition and the future of human society. Once again, so thank you all very much for coming today. While I'm already very relaxed, as you see, I hope you all be able to continue discussion in a more relaxed atmosphere at the reception that follows. Thank you again. ありがとうございました。
This concludes the Open Symposium, Designing Governance for the AI Era. On behalf of KaiLab and the organizing committee, thank you for being part of this important conversation. We invite you to scan the QR code to follow our activities on LinkedIn and stay updated on future events. Also, we appreciate if you take the time to complete our short feedback questionnaire so we can improve our activities. And after we officially close, we would like to take a group photo. So if you want to be part of it, please come to the front. Thanks again for joining us and have a good evening.